All right, welcome back to Last Week Chopped Up, super special edition. Not only am I joined by, of course, my boy Jeremy out in LA, but we got another chopper with us today, Nithin, who I actually went to elementary school with, kindergarten with, and has been part of the crew for a long time. And then we've all been friends for a long time. So Nithin just had to get on the show, and he's going to bring some. So Nithin, what are you going to bring today? What's your addition to the crew? How are you differentiating?
Well, I would say, I'm going to focus in on my specialty, which is hate.
Okay.
So I like to bring in. You guys have been real. I think very kind. I appreciate that. But I think it's time to bring some realness, especially with what we got going on this week with NBA moving around and I think I've thrown in a few times some of the screw ups of the week. I think we could have gone harder, so I'm going to try to bring a little bit more edge on those.
All right, okay. So, yeah, when we were making the concept of the show, we were saying, okay, we're getting up there a little. We're a little older, and we got these jobs and stuff. And what if someone from work hears it? And so we've always tried to keep it at a certain level. But you are coming in as a private citizen, so please be you, and we'll sort it out in the editing room if it goes too far. You know what I mean?
Oh, so, yeah, these are all. You can disavow my thoughts. They do not represent Last Week Chopped Up.
All right. Well, what's good with you, Nithin? What's new out where you at?
So I'm in Medellin, Colombia. I've been actually in Latin America for the last year or so, traveling. So it's been great. Love the culture out here. It's like 70 and sunny, like 12 months a year. People are nice, and life is good. Life is good. Living the digital nomad life post-pandemic. So it's a different world.
I'll say for three dudes that grew up in Houston. One's in Amsterdam, one's in LA, one's in Medellin. We ain't got no kids between us now, but we got about 136 years of life experience for the last week. What's up with you, Jeremy, out there in LA?
Oh, man, it's out here chilling. It is a crazy kind of heat wave out here. So yesterday, the high was like 90.
La Nina.
Yeah, so it's like, man, I'm not used to it being February. Like, dog, it's too hot to go hang out at the beach. Like, crush that noise, Everyone's keeping it real chill. But upside of that, great weather at night to go hit up some rooftops.
All
so
right.
I did do that last night, little rooftop bar downtown. I'm like, okay, this is why we're in LA. This is why you hang out to do this, get that good weather, see some cool people. So that's what I'm doing, man. Just taking advantage of the crazy heat wave and the perfect nighttime weather.
Well, there you go. Jeremy actually texted me yesterday. And he's like, hey, what would you think for like an artistic date, but not the Van Gogh experience because girl's already been there? And I was like, I don't know, like search similar things to the Van Gogh experience. And Jeremy's like, yes, I have access to Google. I was like,
Let me Google that for you.
It's like, okay, haven't thought about that one at all.
You're like, I've been Googling. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. So we were there.
Have you heard of Bing?
Lady, yeah, right. So the lady friend was like, "Hey, so how did you pick this particular rooftop bar here?" I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I went to Google and typed in best rooftop bars downtown Los Angeles, and this was on the list." Boom.
I always feel like, because when you go to a fancy restaurant, they're never going to tell you the meat is from just the factory and the recipes from Google, right? They're going to be like, well, this goat he loved Jack Frost and lived a very elegant life. And this recipe was passed down for generations, because there are psychological studies that show when you tell someone something's more special, it tastes better, like your brain's primed to it. You know what I'm talking about. So I always feel a little awkward, for cooking something. It's like, hey, this is great. Where's the recipe from? It's like, all recipes. I searched chicken dinner ideas, like with my wife, obviously, it's like, and she's amazing, right? So she's like, oh, it's great. But she's like, where'd you get this recipe? I'm like, it's always going to be all recipes. Like it's always going to be, I'm searching an ingredient we have in the refrigerator that would, but you know, I don't know. I need to tell that story.
But the real thing you got to be like, but this was on page 3 though. This is not first page results, baby girl. I'm digging in.
Well, see, Nithin, if we're talking about recipes, Nithin.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god. So if we're gonna, we did a cooking class. Airbnb experience. Jeremy was there too, obviously.
Yeah, all of us. Yeah,
and we're all there. And Nithin's got like pans with the tag still on them. And we're making custard, and you're supposed to put like milk and sugar together. And Nithin's like,
I think this was literally the first time I'd used the kitchen in over a year.
It felt like in over your lifetime.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you do it? What do you do when you're hungry?
You know my history. You know, I'm also somewhat eclectic in terms of how I was trying to source food. And there was a period of my life where I was on a purely liquid diet.
I remember.
By a brand named Huel, which I'm only shouting out because I want to give out as much hate as possible on this podcast to that brand, which should not still be in existence, in my opinion.
They're succeeding. They're doing pretty well, I think, actually.
They're still succeeding. I was an early adopter. I got 0 for that, negative in many ways. Possibly had some malnutrition problems during that phase of my life.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Nithin
But if they want to sponsor the pod, we'll try the new updated Huel and give a new review.
Now with solids. No, so Nithin came over to our place in Austin with Lissa, and Lissa had made these dope pork chops, like super dope, and big pork chops. And Nithin ate his in like a minute and 30 seconds. You would not imagine a human being could eat a pork chop that quickly. And he looks up, he's like, that was so good. And we're like, why'd you eat that so fast? He's like, well, I've been on a liquid diet for a month. And Lissa cuts hers in half that she was going to eat and gives it to him. And he's like, thank you very much, and consumes it. She gave him like half a pie to take home. And he left. And Lissa goes to me, my wife goes to me, hey, we need to invite Nithin back in like 2 days to feed him because I don't think that Huel thing is working out. You need to talk to your boy about that. And I had to bring Nithin aside and be like, hey, so solids are good to eat. All liquids is no. And that was like 3-4 months into us dating. Yeah.
Yeah. Lissa was looking out for me.
For sure.
I think that's where, the having the fair sex come in and talk some sense can work from time to time. So yes, luckily I got off of that. I got back to a normal body weight and was able to eat food at normal pace.
And that's Nithin's Cooking Adventure. So let's jump in. So NBA trade deadline. I love this is like my favorite part of the season. Actually, I'd say arguably as much as the playoffs. This is so exciting. Let's talk about the Harden trade, Wiggins trade first. Winners, losers, what y'all thinking?
Harden, who trade? Run that back. What came out of your mouth there?
Simmons trade. Sorry, we'll edit that out. Harden Simmons trade.
Oh no, that needs to stay in.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it in. All right, winners, losers, reactions.
All right, so I'll jump off and then I'll leave it to my man Nithin because I feel like he's gonna bring some heat on this one.
I know
you know it.
Yeah. So we all Rockets fans, so we got our experience with the beard. To me, this is an interesting one. I was telling some folks, I think this is really pushing the limits of. At first, I was saying player empowerment movement, probably the wrong phrasing, but like Ben Simmons says, hey, I know you're paying me $35 million a year. I don't want to show up for work because you said I might not be able to win a championship. So that's kind of nuts already on that guy sitting out. And then, Harden wasn't having his best year, still making an all-star game. But then I got to kind of think about the situation he's in. I'm like, okay, your fourth best player, Joe Harris, probably isn't playing this whole season. So I'm like, okay, that's whatever. You got 3 stars. KD's been hurt, not hurt. It's like, okay, I'm bearing more load. But I think the tipping point of it being we're now 60%, 65% done with this season, and Kyrie Irving still not vaccinated. And that means he cannot play in home games.
No.
And I think at that point, if you're James, you're like, okay, part of the reason coming here is to not have to do quite as much work. And this guy will not get a vaccine because he's just Kyrie Irving doing crazy Kyrie Irving, whatever, nonsensical stuff. So I kind of get the trade request. Honestly, I think it makes both teams probably better. To be honest with you. So I'm glad it finally went down. Now we're in like no more excuses land. James Harden, you better show up in the playoffs. This is it. You can't get asked to get traded from the 76ers next year. This is dumb, bro. So I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we'll see Ben Simmons play this year. I don't know. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. And with that, I'm gonna hand it off to Nithin to feel this heat right now.
See, this is that PCO. Both teams got better synergy. Blah blah blah. No. I hope to God both teams crash and burn. They get much worse now because honestly, as much as Ben Simmons is getting helped by this big time because now he won't have to take as many shots.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we all know in the playoffs, the defenses will key in on that weakness, and they will force that man to shoot. And he is not going to shoot. He's not going to shoot.
But what do you think about that unicorn, though, who just like, hey, here KD and Kyrie, y'all, well, assuming it's not a home game.
Yeah. It's a away game.
Or that they're playing.
Not in California.
Right. No, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think, like, the biggest villain in all of this was Kyrie. Because he blew up that team, and he's blown up every team he's been on. And the only chip he got was with LeBron, and he took a couple big shots. You know, he actually made those shots. I'm not going to take that away from him, but ever since then, he's been a pariah. So I think he's a huge villain that's skating on this whole deal because everyone wants to hate on Harden, which I do too. Of course, as a Houston fan, he left the city and just, in the worst way, in my opinion. But I actually think Harden was in the right in terms of getting out of that situation with Kyrie. I agree with you on that one. But I think he's going to have a lot of trouble. It's not like you just lose 20 pounds when you get traded, and you stop going to the club and you stop, you start.
That's his training regimen. That's his training regimen. What are you talking about?
Right.
So at least with Simmons, when he got traded, maybe the main thing that changed is his mental health problem around being in an environment that he didn't feel comfortable with.
Sure.
Which I agree with people dealing with that more. I think that's actually admirable in some ways to talk about that aspect of the game because most of the time it had always been brushed under the rug. But I don't think he's going to actually be able to perform under pressure any different either. Right? These are the same players. Just because they got traded, their weaknesses come with them. So Ben Simmons is not going to be able to shoot in the playoffs, and I think he's going to get blown up by his own team as well as the Nets fans, who are not going to be any nicer, than any other.
It's not a lower pressure environment. It's not like he's going to Indiana or something where the spotlight will be less and maybe he can. No, it's a higher pressure environment.
Yeah, so he's going to get a lot of heat in that playoffs, and his track record shows that when he gets some heat, he folds. And then Harden, I mean, the guy is not in shape. I mean, I'm not trying to fat shame. He's not in shape. His hamstring keeps...
If you have to say it, it's a problem.
And I don't think he is on a trajectory where his career is a long one where he can maintain that level of productivity he had in the past. He's an elite playmaker. He can find people, and he's still close to leading the league in assists. But I just don't think with that team where now he has to make a lot of shots. They lost a key 3-point shooter in Curry and depth in Drummond. That there's a lot of pressure for him to perform and put in a lot of minutes. And his body where it is right now, I just don't think it's going to work, especially in the playoffs. I think both of these teams are going to get challenged hard early by a very deep East in the Bulls, in obviously Giannis and the Heat. So I don't think these teams are going to get better. I think like when push comes to shove, the whole point of this is to win a championship. I don't think they're closer.
Okay, so Jeremy's saying both teams get better. Nithin's saying either he's saying both teams get worse or he wants both teams to get worse.
I want both teams to get worse, and I'm gonna stand by it. I think they will get worse.
All right.
So I got one quick question. Are we 2 years away from hearing about how James Harden has gotten into yoga and is now on a plant-based diet. Follow like that Chris Paul. I think that
Ricky
was
Williams.
Zero chance. Ricky was always on that plant-based diet.
Was always on that plant-based diet. He was always on that plant-based diet.
Okay. James Harden has been on a non-plant-based diet his whole life. He's been eating good, and it's not changing.
man.
Here's what I will say. I think the scenario I'm hoping for is James Harden leads and Daryl Morey lead the 76ers to the NBA Finals just because you, Nithin, will be hilarious on WhatsApp, freaking out if James gets a championship in Philadelphia and not Houston. So I'm pulling for ultimate chaos scenario, which is the Sixers get better. The Nets, I don't think they get better. I mean, but it's not. This is not the problem. I agree. It's Kyrie, but I don't think this makes them any better.
So will we get the hopeful playoff series of Sixers versus Nets? Because that is going to be
fairly likely.
Chef's kiss.
It's very possible.
Right?
I mean, right now, Nets are playing. They probably are going to have struggled to get in the top 4. And I think that...
I mean, they're going to struggle to not be in the play-in tournament. Like, they've lost 10 games in a row, man.
All right, well, let's switch gears. Let's talk about... I think a trade that is a little easier to say who got better and who got worse, and that's, the principles involved is Tyrese Halliburton from the Kings going to Indiana and Sabonis going over to the Kings. So 2 young players in their prime, one a little younger than the other, Halliburton a little younger than Sabonis, right? Moving over. This was a head scratcher for me for the Kings, just because you don't typically see a team trading away the ball handling position, a young, potentially top 5 player in the league in a couple of years, I think.
Whoa.
But
Top 5, okay.
Well, you never know.
I don't know. You're in analytics nerd territory.
I don't know. I mean,
top
let's
5
say
Halliburton, man.
a top 30 player, top 25 player, top 20 player. Okay, but to me, it struck me as the Kings a little short-sighted to me. But I don't know how y'all feel about it.
Well, I
so
feel,
I guess from
go for it.
Go for it, Nithin. No, you got
Nithin,
it.
you're a guest. You go. For it.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna jump in. This one I got less hate for, mainly because the Kings are always going to king. That's who they are. They're always going to be making bad decisions that are short-sighted. And in this case, I think it's the least bad decision they could have made coming into this deadline, where they had a big problem. They gave all the money to Fox, and they had Halliburton on the roster. So it's like redundancy problem, and they're not going to be able to move Fox. So they made the choice that let's just try to get a 10th seed, move on from Halliburton, and hope that addition by subtraction somehow Fox gets back his mojo, because now he's the man again. I think that's the only way I could rationalize it. And look, man, that organization, they have not sniffed the playoffs in a long time. Just getting into a playoff, play-in series, at least it gives them something to talk about. I don't think their organization, the fans are going to be that interested in theoretical top 30 player, coming to fruition in possibly 4 years or whatever, 3 years. I just think that they made that decision, and obviously for Indiana, it's a good look, because now they have a great option to see where a young, very young
point guard can go.
Very young, good contract, where it can go. So, and they're trying to do the rebuild the right way, in my opinion. But I'm not going to hate too much on the Kings, because they're always the punching bag. They're never going to really be a destination for anyone to get there. So probably getting Sabonis as a player who can, you can count on him at least to play hard. Yeah.
All right.
He wanted to be the player. He got hate from his own GM talking about, we don't have any legit all-stars on our team, so now he can prove them wrong.
All right. Okay. Jeremy, what do you think about that one?
Yeah. So for me, on my initial response, I was like, this trade is dumb. But as I, had whatever, half a day to think about it. So today, they got the best player in the trade. Today.
Today, yeah.
he is better.
Yep.
Sabonis is better than Halliburton, right? We're projecting future value growth. As Nithin said, they have Fox on the team. They also have Davion Mitchell, another guard they just drafted. And, sometimes I think addition by subtraction can work. Of like, all right, let's just try something out. We know Sabonis is good. Again, he's been All-Star once, maybe twice. I think they're also maybe not playing Fox to feature Halliburton to trade him. Because I don't know if you look, Fox played last night, and De'Aaron's looking pretty good all of a sudden. So I don't know if there's a little bit of the James Harden, he put it, shifting down some gears while there's some conflict. So I think for them, they're on the verge of setting the record of most seasons in a row without making the playoffs. Like breaking Donald Sterling's Clippers record is never something you want to be associated with.
You don't want to be
that much
associated
futility.
with Donald Sterling at all.
Yeah,
Voldemort.
right. So,
he who shall not be named.
Right, and like to me, I think they've tried tank it. Like I wouldn't trust them GMs to say, hey, let's just tank it for another 4 years, suck, and maybe figure it out. Like. Some point you got to get to winning. So will this work? I don't know. But, considering all the dumb things the Kings have done over the years, not too bad.
Okay. I kind of agree with that too, which is basically you're both saying it's the Kings. So if they can get any better in the short run, that's a winning formula. It's a low bar to jump over, but they made it. So let's switch gears here. I'm going to throw a screw up of the week question at y'all. Okay. So. Last week Chopped Up, we talked about Joe Rogan and Spotify. Jeremy made a great point that Spotify is framing the conversation as a platform and around censorship, but Joe Rogan is more similar to a news anchor than he is a sort of just someone distributing through Spotify and other means, as Last Week Chopped Up does. And he said, oh, that's really an employee. And I think that was a great point. And I talked to my wife afterwards. I was like, I had it twisted. Jeremy had it right 100%. Now, fast forward a week later, India Ari has posted this video of Joe Rogan saying the N-word, and we're talking about the hard R N-word here. This is not him singing along to a Lil Wayne song N-word. This is like hard R. I've never. It's horrible to listen to. If you haven't seen it, it's horrible. Spotify's come out and said, TLDR. We're going to invest $100 million into underrepresented groups on Spotify, which to me is like, wait, hold on a second. There's already a lot of underrepresented groups on Spotify. Like, there's a lot of famous rappers on. What does it even mean? To me, it feels a little bit like greenwashing or whatever the word is. But so my question to you is, who's screwing it up harder? Joe Rogan for saying the hard R N-word a bunch of times on his podcast and giving this tear-felt apology and talking about Planet of the Apes when he was dropped off in a black neighborhood in Philadelphia and all sorts of terrible stuff. Or Spotify for standing with them, man. Who's screwing up? Who's the screw up of the week? Spotify or Joe Rogan? Jeremy, what you got?
Yeah, so I hadn't watched the videos or heard it yet, and I had not heard about the $100 million response here. To me, I'd say I think Spotify. I mean, hey, whatever. Joe Rogan's Joe Rogan. Like, I don't, people do dumb stuff.
Yep.
But ultimately, that's him.
Yep.
Right, and he's responsible for his own words. Right.
Yep.
But as the platform or employer, right, even though I'm assuming this happened before he was kind of a Spotify employee.
It did happen before, yes. Yeah, it did.
All right. So I guess they're kind of the screw up, but it's one of those, man, he brings so much attention to our platform, we can't cut him. And we, I think just practically, they're in a pinch. Is what my friends like to say. They're in a pinch. So I guess I would choose Spotify, but I think just everyone's a loser in this situation. Okay. Like, I don't know.
I don't know how you it's like hard R, support the hard R. I don't know how you don't say both are in a tough spot, in a pickle. But I think. This is really on Spotify. This is where business model issues really start to come into sharp relief, right? Like, Spotify has nothing when it comes to being a competitive company in terms of relicensing music that any other music licensing company has. Yeah. Right? Like, they're going to get crushed because all the platforms that own the hardware, like Apple Music, or the content owners themselves, are going to squeeze them.
Yeah.
So they really had only one Hail Mary, which is this whole podcast exclusive content play. It was actually working really well. I mean, if you look,
Smart.
even
Yeah.
in the worst part of that controversy, right before right before everything really blew up, they were announcing that their exclusive content was actually working in terms of giving them more leverage. They were able to get their app on Tesla as a standalone app before they had no leverage to do that, because apparently there's a huge intersection between Tesla owners and people who want to listen to Joe Rogan. I don't know, but
I think the huge crossover is Elon likes them.
exactly.
So that's the best way to get it done.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point I'm making there is that this is where I think a company like Spotify or any other company that starts trying to figure out how they're going to differentiate by content that's created by people that they're paying, either through some exclusive license or directly as employees, is going to essentially have to go through the same process that everyone else goes through when it comes to what standards do we have, how do we address these type of issues, and just saying we're a platform or we're some new thing and we've never seen this before isn't going to work. That's just not going to work.
No, I think you're right. I think we're Alyssa and I were Googling Spotify alternatives because it doesn't sit well with us what's going on, and we're looking at Deezer and a few options, and Deezer has a app that says, oh, you can import your Spotify playlist and all your stuff, great. Love that. Because like you said, from the music side, these are all licensed collectively. Everyone has the same stuff. The podcast was their play. Then you kind of gotta make the right partnerships, and you gotta get close with.
If he's saying I'm going to donate another $100 million, you can imagine that contract that he has with Joe Rogan. The value of that must be at least 5 to 10x of that contract to Spotify.
No, to me, I disagree, because when you talk about they're giving $100 million, vast majority of that money could have been spent in the exact same places. They're just going to relabel it. They're talking about for content for underrepresented communities. What does that mean? They might just get more podcasts from just non-Joe white guys, and then it qualifies. And they were already. We don't know their budget, their content budget. They might have had a whole content budget around this, and some PR person's like, let's spin it to say this. I don't believe it's an incremental $100 million. That to me is the most classic, just Peter pays Paul in the budget accounting. I don't believe that. I'm not disagreeing that Joe Rogan it's the number one podcast in 91 countries on Spotify. Right. So I'm not disagreeing that it's working. I'm just saying this $100 million is not. They're still,
I guess. Okay, even more salient point would be they're sticking with them, right? Like through all of this.
Yeah.
So that tells you they don't want to cut part ways. And
no, I mean they
know they have a.
Yeah,
they have a great deal. They're like, this $100 million was the best $100 million we spent, because clearly for the value of their company, it generated way more than $100 million.
I mean, let me ask y'all a question. If a Fox News anchor came out and in the past had a bunch of recordings with a hard R, N-word, does Fox News stick with that anchor, or do they just can him? Honestly, what do you think?
I mean, I just assume Tucker Carlson has. I don't know.
No,
they'd probably be like, can we put him on
too, but
more hours
the
during the day?
Comes out. The recording comes out of Tucker Carlson. Here's perfect example. Recording comes out of Tucker Carlson, let's say over a year ago, whatever, a bunch of recordings, video of him saying N-word, hard R. Does Fox News stick with him or not?
I don't even know if he gets suspended a day. Like, dude, we know who our audience is. We're good with this. Like, yo.
Okay. I don't know though. I think it's harder though, because Joe Rogan, he seems to I don't know what his political concept is. More like just Joe Rogan. I'm Joe Rogan, and I'm gonna be Joe Rogan.
It's just stupid. It's stupidomics. It's him doing his own research, thinking for himself, being stupid. I mean, it's not left or right wing. It's just stupid wing.
Right. So I'm just thinking in terms of the context of, clearly the brand for Fox is one
right
thing,
wing.
you know? And there's the MSNBC and then CNN. So like brand matters in terms of like how you look at sort of these type of issues, I think. And so with the Tucker thing, I think we wouldn't be surprised because that's on brand for him. Like that's more like, okay, well, he basically dog whistles that all the time anyway. So
I know, but that's the thing.
Actually, now I think I just thought about it. Coming back to it, I think it'll be kind of like what happened with O'Reilly. if advertisers say
Yes.
we're not gonna put our ads on this show, that gets the consequence.
Right.
If advertisers are cool, nothing happens.
That's the thing. I actually think if Tucker Carlson was on a hard R N-word, I think, Nithin, the brand is to not say it out loud. That's the real brand. And saying it out loud ruins the illusion. It was like when I had my first job at Astroworld, and they were like, don't take off the Bugs Bunny helmet because it ruins the illusion. So I think the advertisers would throw a fit because it ruins the illusion that they're not actually this racist. And I think he would get suspended. I don't think fired. I think I think a higher degree of consequences would happen to Tucker Carlson saying the hard R N-word than Joe Rogan. I honestly
Well, that goes back to the business model too, right? Joe Rogan doesn't get paid directly by advertisers.
That's true.
He actually has Spotify come into his assistance there, whereas Fox would be like, well, the ads are how we make money, so we gotta do something to you. Like,
right.
Really.
Bro, it's made me think of the episode title, Hard R Fight Club. That's essentially what you just described. We don't talk about Fight Club.
Nobody talks about it. First rule of saying the hard R word in News Corp is you don't talk about saying the hard R word in News Corp. But Nithin's on the show. Now we're taking it to the controversial topics. All right. Well, let's switch gears here. I wanted to ask y'all. We talked about distributed autonomous organizations previously on the show, Jeremy and I. It's a very difficult one to say, or you can call them a DAO. And there was recently, we were chatting about it this week, that there was some voting within a DAO to oust the leader because he made some tweets about how he hates everyone except straight white males or something like this, TLDR, and not
He's
too
like
uncommon.
a Catholic fundamentalist viewpoint, basically.
Or an NFL owner, median NFL owner, similar thing, right? So,
right,
yeah.
Well, his justification is that
his justification is Catholic fundamentalism.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And they ousted him. But I started thinking, because Jeremy, when we talked about it last time, I felt that my opinion was that it was a unregulated, distributed form of a corporation. Corporation, you have voting rights based on shares. You have this ability. But now I'm thinking, with GameStop and all of this kind of mass activism type scenarios that you saw on Reddit, do you think it's plausible that a DAO could be formed to buy, I don't know, the Washington football team or the Washington Commanders because, let's say they get put into a situation where based on their whole legal situation, Daniel Snyder's forced to sell. Do you think it's plausible that a DAO could be started where everyone puts in a couple thousand and it triggers only if it gets bought, just like the scenario we talked about with that painting, Jeremy? Do you think we're going to see some activism around it? Because I think the numbers kind of work,
So I'm going to say definitely not a sports team because that's a coalition and they have to let you in.
Okay.
This is not just
right,
if you have the money.
Approve you.
Right?
Okay,
yeah. So, but let's say it's something else. I think purpose-built DAOs, sure. There's the Art One Constitution DAO.
Sure.
So there's, we're doing this for this purpose. Now, what happens if, let's say, the DAO are successful? I think literally no one knows how to run it. Yeah, right? Yeah. Because most of these that I've seen have a governance token that can be purchased. Whoever, generally you have voting rights, let's say 1-to-1 attached to tokens. So you're like, okay, I bought up enough that just like a company, I have enough voting rights to do whatever I want. So even though we're quote unquote collectively doing this, it's pretty clear democracy. I just need to have enough shares and, I can push this forward. And I think, because I've done some more research in the DAOs, and I think that's kind of hey, guys, maybe this is easy, like I said, we can organize to make a purchase that might be more difficult without a DAO. But the other side of the rainbow, the post-action, I think is going to be very messy because, hey, after this now we're really need to be a corporation. What is our governance? How do things really work? What do we want to vote? I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a business. That just sounds like a business, organizations we have now. So I think it's mostly on the tech side to make it easier to gather money and question mark. But that's me, a little cynical. What do you think, Nithin?
Yeah, I'm much less cynical on it overall. I think that it is interesting to see, like the like you pointed out, the one of the most immediate changes that this enables is that you can have collective action where a lot of people can pool their money to try to take on whatever thing they want to take on, right? That's the whole concept of the DAO, whether it's to buy the Constitution or to try to buy the Washington football team. I think that in and of itself is something really cool, right? Is that you can have the ability to have collective action at a grassroots level, which previously wasn't really available to the average person, right? Like even the average person who's a shareholder of a publicly traded company, you know, before fractional shares, it was sort of hard for you to buy a $3,000.
Let me toss out just one idea, because cynical me. Let's say we wanted to have a Constitution Kickstarter.
Right.
That existed before DAOs.
Right.
What's different than that?
Because it wasn't peer-to-peer, right? Kickstarter was the central authority, and Kickstarter had the ability to essentially set the rules, and those rules were actually really difficult for a lot of people to participate with, because Kickstarter said you're a backer, you're not an owner, you have no actual, you know, ability to affect the decision making of the entity that you're supporting. So I think a lot of people look at Kickstarter and said, you know, some people said it was cool and they participated, but a lot of people said, what am I really getting out of this? You know, there's not enough there. Now you actually can participate in a Kickstarter type fashion. I'm not saying that is unique, but now you have the ability to have ownership, and not just in publicly traded companies. You can start working with other spaces, in privately held companies, in smaller organizations. I think this example of the ENS, which is the domain system that was the leader was removed from because of his his statements, is an example of what happens on the other side, right? How does a DAO actually, how does the collective action problem get solved within the construct of tokenomics and token systems for governance? And I think we're seeing an evolution here. I think there's some interesting points that have been made about this, is that you can start formulating in within the smart contracts themselves, so in a sort of code-based logic of how you want to, in advance, think about dealing with situations like this. Should there be triggered cooling off periods when an emergency occurs? How do we actually delegate better this whole problem of the agency problem, right? Like all companies have this, right? Their management wants to do certain things, ownership wants certain things, employees want certain things. So the corporation has worked very well throughout history in terms of solving those problems. And I don't think that you just throw that away. I think you can implement a lot of the same constructs within now a DAO type system. I think the sort of the hype that people have is that somehow through DAOs you have this like, all the collective action problems are solved. That's not true. Yeah. I think through DAOs, you allow for more people to participate in collective actions using existing systems of governance to try to implement using that technology. And with the technology, as we've seen, when new technologies occur, you can start seeing innovation in terms of the management approaches as well. So maybe you don't always have just a board of a few largely white men who control all of the resources of a corporation, and you don't have just a few agents who make all the decisions. You know, maybe you can start within a construct of code, building out smarter ways in which you can delegate authority. You can still have largely the same things. You can see the progression, in my opinion, for a more inclusive way for people to have the ability to participate in organizations, whether they're corporations or just grassroots movements.
Well, then what would be, so like, here's a for example I could think of. Newspapers are struggling, but people believe there's a benefit to society of quality news. So like Jeff Bezos formed an LLC to buy the Washington Post very famously. A lot of people have an issue with a gazillionaire owning a newspaper, right? I could see, let's say San Francisco Chronicle comes up for sale. Right. You know, a DAO seems like potentially, I'm not as optimistic as you as these smart contracts, but just from a like think of it as a way to raise capital to govern the San Francisco Chronicle like a corporate structure. There's voting rights. They put a board in place. They vote for a board. It looks just like a corporation, except shareholders within the DAO, not the stock market, and vote through the DAO, et cetera. That seems like plausible to me for these types of scenarios where people really believe in it. They're not doing it to make money. They want to be like it's sort of like the Green Bay Packers, kind of. You're a shareholder, but you just get to vote, but it's somewhat symbolic. I know it's a little different there, but I don't know. That feels like I would love to see it happen. And what I'd love from Web3 in general is it for not just to be for like transferring money for drug dealers. Like I'd love something where it feels like it's actually good for the world, because I don't see a lot of that. Like crypto, to me, I'm super salty on it just because I don't see it providing value to society right now. DAO, I could see it, but if it's just for like, I don't know, buying up paintings and stuff, that feels like a pretty superficial use case. And to Jeremy's point, you're gonna have to deal with, like you said, corporations have been wildly successful, Nithin. I completely agree with you, but they're also complex to run. So I don't know. So I'm in between. I'm in between y'all. I don't know, Jeremy. But you heard Nithin, Jeremy. Is it Nate, what he said? Are you feeling like a little more optimistic, or are you like, well, I don't know, it's still complicated?
I mean, I think there's going to be some upside. Again, I think the organizing and quickly pulling money, yes. But I think the governance issue is real. Like, that's a real problem. And not only that, like, you need to get lawyers involved. Like, hey, I bought this governance token. Legally, what am I entitled to? I think when we talk about the Constitution DAO, if they'd won the Constitution, like, okay, what's the legal contract? Who actually holds on to the Constitution? Like, how do we operate with this? Because as you detach from the digital to the physical world, it's like, how do I make sense of this? Because at some point, we need a real contract. And if we think of smart contracts on chain, to make those, like, real world contracts, you probably need lawyers, not just coders.
Well,
right?
You need to know what the people are. I mean, one of the main things. As well, yes. One of the main things in central contracting is you physically show up, your identity's verified, and so forth, right? Like, that's one of the things in the movies when they're making all of these, like, I transferred the money. Like, in almost every place in the world, there's know your customer statutes. You can't just sell someone's house without being there. Like, the physicality of being in the room and verifying your identity is still a huge part of contracting and banking. And I think you're right, Jeremy, that will have to get dealt with in some way. That all being said, we're about out of time. So, Nithin, you want one last shot in?
I would just say, I won't bring up a new topic right now, but just allude to it. There was, $4 billion crypto heist. They got caught, and largely because of the mechanism of crypto, right? That the ledger is open and distributed and immutable. So I think that some of the things you were just talking about there, where know your customers and all those things, they all work together. If anything, it strengthens that, because once they got the money, they realized, number one, everyone could see where all the wallets where all the Bitcoin got transferred through all the wallets, and now I can't get that money out in terms of US dollars or any other place without violating Know Your Customers. So I think there's a lot of complements, whereas in most of these discussions you see, for some reason, these crypto maximalists, and you see, the old school way saying, like, this is mainly just facilitating illegal activities. And I think there's a lot more complements as opposed to substitutions.
All right. Well, we'll definitely see as the world keeps going. Well, look, this is a fun last week chopped up with Nithin joining us from Medellin, Colombia. We remind you, if you're a fan of last week chopped up, to tell your friends and tell your coworkers to have a listen. If you're on a podcasting platform, hit follow, like, or subscribe, whatever it is there. If you're on YouTube, hit like or subscribe. And we're looking forward to seeing you next week. With that, holla Choppas. We'll see you out there. Want to say goodbye, guys?
See you later, Choppas. Choppas out. Chop, chop, Choppas out.